Hello and welcome back. Here we are again after the holidays. Welcome back to Crossroads of Cognizance. New date, new time. Hopefully, some of you can join us while we're here. And as always, if this is your first time, I'm Dahlia Rose, holding down the East Coast at Crystal Cognizance.
I'm
And with
Katrina
me,
Rasbold on the West Coast at Crossroads Metaphysical Store, and we come to you to discuss what the themes have been in our shops, what we're seeing with the people that are our clients, our students, and how that interacts with the themes going on in the country right now.
yes. And even though, like I said in our post, even though we took a little small break, over the holiday, I mean, life still happened. So here we are to discuss all of that. And as always, like and subscribe so that we can meet with you on this day. It will be Thursdays, 2 o'clock Pacific Standard Time and 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Weird time zones. And it'll be every Thursday from now on.
It
So
does feel different, even though it's still 3 hours apart. It feels weird, like we're somehow further apart in the day or something.
is it only 3 hours?
It's
That's
only three
crazy.
hours, yeah, 2 to 5, yeah,
That's wild. But
sure.
so we're coming up on the end of the year, and what's interesting, I think, one thing we didn't talk about, Katrina, or didn't pre plan, was we're arriving on another solar eclipse. So the
Wow.
last one was a partial
Then
during
we had
our
a
last
lunar.
show. Yep.
Just had the
And
lunar.
then and now we're stepping into that on the 4th. So the energies have been wild. I mean, we have lots to talk about, guys. So one place we can start, and I was just sharing a little bit of my experience with Katrina as she brought up the topic, was the way in which people, healers in particular, whether you do it actively or passively, are overextending themselves. So, I know in my experience, it seemed to come from a place of supporting my regular professional clients, and then my family, and then lastly me. And there seemed to be no gaps. It was all very seamless. Wake up, support clients, come home, family, oh, and lastly, before I go to bed, myself. And it's been a wild ride. What about you, Katrina?
I really think we can even extend that. I focus on healers because that's my world. I teach healing classes. I work as a healer every day that I'm working. And so I think in terms of healer, but when we look into the client base, we can also say givers, the
Yes.
people who are caretakers, the people who are making themselves responsible for other people or holding down their own forts are really getting overextended right now. And I'm going to bring my daughter into this a little bit. She's in the room with me right now, and she's very much the mother hen of her home. She and her girlfriend and my son and his partner all live in one house together as adults. And Delina is by far the mommy of the group. And boy, she has just been on fire lately with her giving because my son's partner just got here.
Okay.
Um, he was involved with his partner for a year online, and then the borders opened for the UK, and his partner was able to come over. We got to meet them finally, and they're adorable. And so Delina has been in the process of opening up her home and making sure
Oh.
that they're comfortable. And so she's just been on high octane nurture for a while now. A lot of my clients I'm talking to have just had Thanksgiving, so they had a lot of emotion around what happened with the big meal and who's cooking and what they're
Mm-hmm.
doing. So, and we're going into Christmas. And so a lot of people are on high provide mode. And I can't say it enough, we have to regulate that. And that I
Absolutely.
say that including myself, the we is not just the royal we. I mean, I have got to do this myself, and I'm struggling to do that. And I'm working harder at it. It's just so important that we gear that back and make that manageable so that we're not overextended, because then we can't help anyone.
Absolutely. And what that can look like, just walking away, putting things down, turn your phone off, walk away, go for a walk. I mean, people will understand. but completely. One of the things that I really appreciated about you, Katrina, when we first started learning, and I know I've said this before, is that complete step away, that creating and carving out space. And it probably needs to be like 24 hours at least, but should be, over the holidays it could be a few more days.
Mm-hmm.
And you were sharing how you're going to be taking some time away towards the end of the year,
Mm-hmm.
but if your schedule doesn't allow for that, or your family obligations, 24 hours is great. Just walk away, drive, just go.
Well, and when you don't have a lot of support when you're bringing up kids, it's really hard to step away from being a mom or a parent for even a few hours. And
Absolutely.
I was never one of those parents that had a grandparent there that I could just take my kids to and say, I need a few hours. Can you please just watch them for a little bit? There was
Right.
never anyone like that. And with my later kids, relied on my older children who babysat and took care of them, much to their chagrin. But, you know, some people don't have those options, and it's really hard to make yourself get up an hour early in the morning or stay up after they go to bed and just have that quiet time where nobody needs you.
Right.
When you are the needed, it's really hard to always be on. And
Absolutely.
you had mentioned that you kind of felt like that, gosh, lately it's just every time you turn around, someone needs something, or there's another healing that has to happen. And I've been very much in the same place, and I've really found that I've had to almost decide, and this is loosely decided, that I'm not taking new clients,
Mm.
because the clients I have right now fill my schedule to the point that I have a relationship with them. I want to take care of them,
Yep.
and bumping out new people definitely isn't what I want to do. But there's only so much of me and so much time that I have to give in a schedule. So I have maybe just a rare few appointments that are for new clients now.
But that speaks to the integrity of the work, right? Like towards the end of the year, maybe um, it it's more it comes from a place of strength to be able to support the clients in a deeper way like that. I mean, I you know it is there is a level of like overextension in terms of quantity, and so by having that boundary of fewer or no new clients, is it sounds exactly appropriate. I mean, it sounds like you're getting to take care of yourself in there as well,
It's
knowing where
hard
that line
too, and
is.
you know this because you'll get an email or some kind of contact from a client, and you're thinking, I could help this person.
Yeah.
I could really be an impact in this person's life. But then you have to hold that up to your availability and whether or not that's even feasible for you to do that. I hate turning people away, especially when I don't mind as much if it's somebody that I'm saying, this really isn't my wheelhouse, or
Hmm.
I'm not my specialty, or they don't have a good grasp of what I'm doing here. And
Right.
I'm going to have to spend a lot of time explaining and teaching and going into descriptors as to what I'm doing. But if it's somebody that I just really feel like I can help and we're on the same page and I'm vibing with them, it's really hard for me to turn them away.
Yeah, absolutely. I had to turn away a teaching client. They were like, "Hey, can you mentor me?" And I was like, the integrity in me says I can't, just not right now, because I'm supporting all these healing clients. It wouldn't be ideal. So the interesting contrast, or perhaps it's not contrast, but the interesting thing that goes along with all of this support, is people's shift in awareness as well. Um, Not only are they seeking out more healing, it's the end of the year, they kind of want to, you know, uh, wash things off and get to the end. Um, but I don't know if you noticed this. Black Friday was really weird. It was oddly quiet, and not from a sales standpoint, but like stepping outside. I'm used to feeling frantic energy, and it was silent. It was the strangest thing.
I noticed the same thing. In fact, Eric is very much the economist. That's his jam. It's what he got his degree in. And he said that this was the lowest Black Friday returns that had been in centuries. It was just an all-time low. And when you're talking about it's getting to the end of the year, one thing I would qualify is it's getting to the end of a really hard year.
Mm-hmm.
People are processing so many things. And after Samhain, and we've gone over this a couple of episodes already, after Samhain is when we get very introspective and go inward about what happened in our year, because naturally nature drives us inside. Around this
Yep.
time is when it's getting cold out and we're not working in the fields as much. And so we would go inside, literally and figuratively. And so many people, as they're moving into that introspective time, are really finally seeing the trauma that they've been through this year
Absolutely.
and having to
And
tend that.
taking that into, do I buy the thing that's on sale? I it was quiet and beautiful to witness that a lot of people are like, it's not worth it. You know, my family is where my priorities are. I'm staying home. I'm staying inward, because of the last year and then the year before. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
drawing a contrast between the two, it seemed like the end of 2020, around sales and things like that, people were just trying to manage, like, okay, maybe I can make 2020 better by getting this gift. And it
Mm-hmm.
seemed like 2021 was this shift into, my family's the gift, my time with them is the gift,
Mm-hmm.
you know um instead of, I got to get to the sale and get the thing.
Another energy around that is at the end of 2020, I think our collective thought process was, whoo, thank God that's over. Let's go into a brand new year.
Yeah.
And then we get to 2021 and it's even more of a shit show than
Right.
2020 was. And we're thinking, how is that even possible? And so now people are just in this place of bracing themselves for what comes next rather than being hopeful for what happens when we step over into 2022. We're just kind of
Right.
settled into this resignation of, well, this is just going to be bullshit. So buckle up, Buttercup.
It seems challenging, right, to be in that headspace, but I almost feel like it's healthier, um because positivity can be toxic. I mean, it's a repeat discussion. Toxic positivity, you don't want to be too overzealous, you don't want to be, that was one of the trends that I was seeing. It was a smaller trend than others, but people saying, well, I know I'm not supposed to be thinking negatively, or I shouldn't be doing this and that, I should be positive. And I was like, but negativity can bring such a beautiful gift.
Mm-hmm.
It can show you exactly where your boundaries have been crossed. It can show you where you're not in alignment. I know when I get into negative spaces, and I'm a Virgo, it's very easy. Um, I call it realism. But, you know, I know when I get into those spaces, I have to stop and ask myself, okay, wait a minute, you're defending yourself. What are you defending yourself against?
Mm-hmm.
And it took years to figure that out, but I have negativity to thank for that, because if I had just should it all over myself to say I needed to be
Mm-hmm.
positive, then I would never have gained the perspective to change, the perspective to actually have my needs fulfilled at a deeper level.
I completely agree. And again, not to beat a dead horse, but at the end of 2020, we were clinging to those people who were positive and optimistic. Oh, believe me, this is going to get better. Everything's going to be okay. And we're like, oh, thank God for you, because I can't hold space for positivity now. But there you are, being hopeful and excited and happy. I'm so happy that you're there. Thank you. Thank you. Now we take those people out back and shoot them because we don't want to hear about the positivity in the light of all of the struggles right now. And I do agree with you of the power of not just even negativity, but just open your eyes.
Yeah.
It isn't all positive, and we do need to work on the things that are negative. And like you said, that's where we set boundaries. And that is a theme that I hadn't realized was a theme until you said that. But for me, in the last week, I have had to set some really strong boundaries. And I'm not good with that, especially when it comes to my kids.
Oh,
And I really had to just say, no, this is something that's not going to happen. This isn't okay. And I saw other people as well who were finally setting long-term boundaries that they should have set a long time ago.
Yeah, there was as you were talking about setting those boundaries, there is this there's a feeling that comes with that, right? That's that resist. There can be a level of resistance that brings
Mhm.
this like anxious feeling, and I think that also with awareness, realizing is this my anxiety or is this something telling me that I shouldn't, is an important awareness to come to. Um, like I've had people become anxious over approaching healing, and they're like, wait a minute, this must mean that I'm not supposed to do it. And it's like, no, this is that feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm really going to have to put this down and never pick it up again. And, you know, I think when setting boundaries, I know I've seen people get into that space where they're like, wait a minute, I set that boundary and I'm feeling this anxiousness. Does that mean that I set too much? Not realizing
Mm,
that
mm.
boundaries can be flexible. They're
Sure,
supposed to be,
sure.
right? Like we often talk about boundaries, not we, but the collective we, like they're walls. Like, oh, I set that boundary and it stays right where it is. And it's like, well, it is supposed to be a fluid thing as
Hmm.
well. So,
And people get this false idea that doing the right thing always feels good, or that doing the right thing is somehow you're going to, at the end of it, just be very confident that that's what you should do. And I'm still very much working on that. And when I'm getting ready to set a boundary, because I'm not good at that, I often will wait and say, I'll wait for someone else to say that's jacked up or that shouldn't be happening. And then I'll set my boundary because someone else agreed with me. I have a really
mm,
hard time saying I'm uncomfortable with this. That's all that matters. And so I'm setting this boundary. And when I do that, I often wonder, am I just being an asshole? Am I just closing myself off to anything that's challenging? Am I not demanding enough from myself in terms of tolerance and graciousness? And more as I age, I'm getting to the point of it doesn't matter. This makes me uncomfortable. I don't have time to be this uncomfortable with this one person. And if they're not able to honor this, they've got to go off the table.
absolutely. And we've said that before. That feeling is enough. That feeling of somebody pressing on your boundaries is enough for you to say no. You don't have to wait for the infraction. You don't have to wait for the justification. And I honestly, I'm impacted by that as well. I definitely go through those instances. So it's interesting how we're all sort of managing. I mean, I think boundaries will continue to be a theme. I really feel like it kicked up in 2018 is when people really started having intro conversations to boundaries. And I think it's just going to keep growing because it's not something we're taught. We're taught that boundaries are selfish. And now we're
Mhm.
starting to have the conversation that selfishness is okay. It's self centeredness that is not ideal.
And we have so many conversations about gaslighting, for instance, and how people are advantaged by making us think that our boundaries are selfish and that we shouldn't be setting boundaries. And that if we're doing that and depriving them of something they need, we're somehow the bad guy. And so that becomes this whole head game that goes on when you're setting those boundaries, when you've been in a position to be convinced that you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be depriving people of what they need when you have the capacity to give that in some way to their perspective.
And it even begs the question: is it what they need or what they want? I mean,
Well, yeah, that's such a thin line.
yeah, it really is. I mean, I don't know about how you feel, but I know I can sometimes be mostly for people like newly stepping into the healing game. They can treat me like Tylenol, like, oh, okay, symptom addressed, bloop, and
Mhm.
then it's like, wait a minute, where's the work? Never be faulted for coming back repeatedly for a session
Mhm.
because that's appropriate on some occasions. But my thing is, if you're investing, you should invest, on your behalf as well, time, effort, energy, all of that. So need versus want, right?
Mhm. But
Um,
for instance, there's some people that really, in their deepest spirit, need an audience. They
Oh,
need
yes.
somebody to hear every thought that goes through their mind. They don't have a filter. They just have a soliloquy that's ongoing. And I might be at a place where, okay, that's what you need on some level, but I'm overwhelmed. I need to not hear you for a little while.
Yeah.
So I'm going to
Family
take some
included.
time. Yeah, yeah. So, what one person feels they need isn't always going to marry up to what another person's able to give.
Absolutely, capability. And one other conversation that I tend to have around what you just mentioned is that doesn't mean they don't love you. It doesn't mean they don't care. It is not if you love me then this, if you care about me then this. It's
Hmm.
I just don't have the capability right now, and because I love you, because I care, I can't offer that.
And continually demanding from somebody what they don't have to give is a form of abuse.
It is
It
absolutely.
doesn't mean that you don't deserve that. It just means they don't have the capacity to give that. And it really damages the relationship for
No,
one person to continue to demand that.
absolutely. I think that one of the topics that you were encountering this week sort of marries into this, and I was hoping, my want versus need, I was hoping that you would clarify what a clarifying crisis is, because it seems somewhat related to what we're talking about.
A lot of people have these experiences where they're suspecting that something is true or they're needing something to happen, but they're unwilling or unable to take the step to make that happen.
Mm,
And so the universe just steps in and kicks the monopoly board and makes that happen. So, or you're not getting a lesson, and very suddenly the universe creates some sort of crisis in your life that forces you to accept that lesson.
mm,
And I see a lot of people having big experiences right now that are giving them some pretty deep lessons or putting them in a place where they needed to be, where they were unable or unwilling to move forward.
interesting.
So that's
So
what I meant with clarifying crisis.
so it's that moment where you are looking at something that you think you can tolerate or you just endure, and it's like, no, you're up against this wall again,
Mm-hmm.
because a shift needs to happen. It's not even a wall, it's a door that you just haven't opened.
I really feel like I need to move off this mountain but I can't because I have all this shit.
Mm.
I hate to keep coming back to that, but that's a clarifying crisis right there.
Yeah, you said
Well,
it
what are you
best.
going to do without all this shit if we burn it down?
Well, I'm getting off
And
the mountain now.
people in long-term relationships that are abusive or uncomfortable or even just imbalanced, and
Mm,
suddenly they find out that their partner is seeing somebody else, and that's a
mm,
deal breaker for them. Things being pushed past the critical line so that they can't deny a message anymore.
yeah.
And so I've got a lot of people coming into me with that. Sometimes it's a matter of something is finally being adjudicated,
Mm,
where they really were convinced that they're in the right and a judge is saying, no, you're guilty. And they have to look at or choose whether to look at their accountability.
right. Their own personal investments, their behaviors, their belief systems around right and wrong
Right.
can be a real slap in the face from the
Sure
universe.
can. And then there are a lot of people who are finding that their behaviors are creating reactions in the people around them.
Mm,
And so they'll start blaming the people around them for being intolerant or ungracious without considering maybe I need to work on this behavior.
yeah. The consistency of the behavior being the telltale sign. It's like if
Right.
everybody has the same reaction, you know,
Can everybody actually be wrong?
very rare. Wow. Um, the clarifying crisis at this time of the year brings up an interesting trend I know on my end as well. People have been coming, it seems to be Libra season. So we went from, Libra season into Sagittarius. And all these Libras were coming in and they were like, it's my birthday, I'm starting over. And like I had like 5 or 6 client birthdays, like, okay, I'm coming to get a healing, coming to get a cleansing. Tell me what I'm coming up against in the new year. And they were also having clarifying crises. Like they'd come in and excited, and then I'd hand them this paper that was like, okay, here's everything that you skipped over. And it'd be like, oh, and this is what you can look forward to in the new year. And as we come to the end of the year for a Libra, that would be natural. For Sagittarius and Capricorn, that would all be natural to do that around this time of year anyway. But for the rest of us, one of the things that I was hoping to put out there is this isn't really the end of the year. It's the middle of the winter. We all celebrate New Year's on January 1, but it's still winter time. Like New Year's doesn't come until the next season. And our personal New Year's don't actually come until our birthdays. That's why it's called the solar return. And if you're having a clarifying crisis right now, it may be as Katrina was saying with the cusp path. What's being buried, what's being, how are you preparing? But I feel like there can be anxiety around the end of the year because of this new year push.
Mm-hmm.
And that can also put you into a clarifying crisis.
And
Because,
New Year's is not strategically the best time to make any changes at all.
yep, found that
When,
out.
yeah, when everything is under ice, everything's frozen, that's not the time when you plant. That's the time when you plan and consider and think about it. So it's definitely timely to be thoughtful about what you want to change in your life, but you don't really start implementing those changes until spring comes and you go into the light of the year.
Yep.
That would be the best time for that. And yet you've got everybody signing up for the gym on January
Yep.
2nd and wondering why they're, not going on February 2nd.
Right. Well, things drop off right around mid-January. It's not the time to start. And to your point of the gym, you see it all the time. People are like, hey, I've put on a little weight here and there in the wintertime, and I've had at least 4 or 5 conversations with different people to say, like, hey, your body knows it's cold. Your body is trying to do what other animals in the animal kingdom do, which is pack on the thing that's going to sustain you through a quieter season, through a less active time.
And
And
also, well, and one thing that is different, and now the activity is what I'm addressing with the gym, but in the winter, that's a time when we shouldn't need to eat quite as much because we're not having as much activity. But on the other hand, we're not eating salads because we don't have a garden growing right now.
exactly.
So it should be getting into what is nature telling us to eat right now. Probably warm foods,
Yep.
stews and soups and casseroles and things that are nurture foods.
Absolutely. Things that yeah, you might pack on a little bit of weight. Your metabolism's going to slow down. Well, actually, I guess it might speed up too because it's cold because you shiver. Anyway, I'm not I'm not a nutritionist, clearly, but going with the natural flow, the natural state of things will, I think, also help get through that clarifying crisis piece. I think that's probably part of the lesson, don't you? Just relaxing into the flow. Like the crisis it's in motion, and the greater lesson is, how do I surrender? That's a big metaphysical word, surrender to the process. And I
That's
know
a
we've
tough
talked about
one.
that.
And I was just having I just taught basic healer to the second group of kids coming through the healer class, and we were on basic healer 4, which is connecting with your higher power and your higher self. And really it's an odious class because there's so much to discuss about it. And
Mm,
for you, it was a long time ago, because you're already master healer. But revisiting that with those kids, I was getting into how heavy a conversation and discussion that is. And what is challenging about it is that idea of surrender and faith.
Mhm.
because we always want to believe that we're doing all the things we need to do to have a healthy and productive quality of life that's really blossoming and flourishing. And yet, there's those times when it's out of our hands, when we really can't do anything, and we have to just let go. And people keep wanting to tinker, they keep wanting to pull strings and adjust. And sometimes you just got to let go and let God. You just got to relax and go down the stream with the flow and see where you end up. Let the world turn a few days
Yeah.
and see where it comes. But yeah, especially for Virgos like you and me, that level of control release is very difficult.
It's extremely difficult and uncomfortable. And why? Let me help. I just want to fix it.
There must be something more I can do
Yeah,
because the
absolutely.
situation is still irreparably jacked up. What else can I do without jacking it up more?
I believe I used the sentence, I just want to take it out of the universe's hands and just do something about it. Really, just for a little while. Let me let me just help.
And we
Um,
always believe we know better
yeah.
when we're probably the ones that jacked it up to start with. Yeah, and yet we know more about what should be happening right now, being the
Right.
experts and all.
Right. What a wonderful time of the year though um for the reconnecting with divinity class. That was one of my favorite classes in basic healer,
Mm-hmm.
because it was so it rejuvenated that connection. That it can go stale. I mean, when you get used to it, you're kind of like, all right, all the people in my head assemble, what are we doing today? And that class, even though you may have the answers to how do I connect to the divine, what does it represent to me, and you know what are my beliefs around all of that, and going over from start to finish. I mean, what were you handed as you were growing up versus what you believe now? Like all of that. It might have been a long time ago, but still I remember sort of being dumbfounded by the thought, by the questions. I was like, wait a minute, I haven't asked these questions in a long time, and it was a reconnective moment for me. And in this time of year when we're supposed to go within, it's an awesome opportunity to ask those questions and then see how that plays into the various processes of your life. It
You know,
shouldn't just be magical.
the timing is absolutely perfect because cross culturally, this is a time of spiritual regeneration
It is.
because we look at the Christian perspective of the birth of the Son being the Son of God being celebrated, which derived from the birth of the Sun, SUN, which was the longtime veneration of the sun when the sun began to return to the sky and the days got longer. So it's a time when we're looking outward, outside of ourselves, to that higher power, whether it's the sun or the sun, that is that's coming, that's appearing. And so that's a wonderful time to welcome in your gods and goddesses, creator, universe, whatever you call your higher power. It's a great time to reconnect at the dark of the year because that's when we're introspective and that's when the energy is about welcoming the return of deity for all purposes.
Absolutely. And it's so much stronger when you think about nighttime in general. It seems to be a stronger time for connecting with source, connecting with spirit, connecting with spirits if you're a medium,
Mhm.
all of that. And so now we have this very timely part of the year where dark is longer. So you have that opportunity to connect deeper, to connect further. It's really something that we should maximize. Um, we've spent the year learning lessons, and for those on the spiritual path, I'm sure have gathered spiritual tools. I know I have, being in your class and just living life in general. And this is one of the things that was a trend over on the East Coast over here. I kept hearing people say, well, there must be something else I can do. And this kind of draws back to what we were saying a few minutes ago, was that there must be something else that I'm here to learn, or need to know on my spiritual path. What's the next thing? And haven't yet applied the thing from 5 things ago. And so you do have work to do, and there's a very potent period of the year that we're in right now because of the darkness. It's for you to be able to apply these concepts to the healing crisis, to the overextensions, to whatever you're traversing right now.
Another thing I'm seeing that applies to what you're saying is in spell work. I'm seeing an increase in people who aren't wanting to do the accountable work that comes along with the spell work. They just want to add another candle on. So instead of actually, you know, creating the situations in their life that would welcome whatever they want,
Mhm.
they're instead just throwing magic at it.
Yep.
Isn't there when you said, isn't there something else I could do? That's exactly what I hear with almost every client. What else can I do? Okay, I'm burning these 5 love candles and we did the giant love spell or love ritual. Can't I just do a honey pot too? Sure, but if you just call the person, that might help as well. If you
Right.
just apologize for the things that hurt them, that might be good.
Right.
But people,
Apologize.
yeah,
Therapy.
recognize that maybe this relationship is irreparable because of damage you did, and bless it and let it go and move on to something else. People want what they want and they get really locked into that narrative, and they're not willing to see the work that they might need to do or the acceptance and surrender that might need to come up in order to get the best outcome for them. An example of this, and I think we talked about this before, is that when my marriage to my first husband, who was also my second husband, ended, I was so devastated and just clinging to that, working all kinds of magic. He has to come back. This has to get fixed. We have to make it. This is the second time we've been divorcing. I won't endure that. I reject that. And was just fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting. And when I finally gave up and said, this is more than what I can manage, I'm letting it go, was when I met the love of my life. So we don't always know what's best for us or what we're meant to be doing. We think we do,
Yeah.
but we just get locked into our own narrative of what should be and fight for that.
I can definitely empathize with that. At the point that I met the love of my life, I was like, up to that point, I was pushing the love thing, not necessarily doing spells because I no concept of that at that time, but hoping or just settling for what would come my way, and then realizing the energetic implication of that, and then finally just saying, you know what, okay, I'm just going to be a nun, like that's it. And I called you, or didn't call but emailed, and I was like, I need a cleansing. I just need to wash all of this off.
I'm thinking crazy thoughts. I
and
called a convent and then I called you.
and then at that point, what was interesting was letting go of a 19-year on and off situation.
Wow.
19 years. Most of it, majority of it was friendship. But, in the back of my mind, I was like, well, I'm just going to be here and I'm just going to wait. And it was not going to happen. And I still, even now, I'm like, you knew that wasn't going to happen in this life. And then, I surrendered, and I was like, I didn't surrender enough. Got to email Katrina. All right. Get my Olympia. You even said it in the Olympia results. You were like, you need to let go of somebody. And I was like, oh, that's why I emailed you. And then days later, literally days later, I had made enough space for the love of my life to step in. And it's been amazing ever since. And so there has to be, that's the work. At least that's what I hear you saying when I hear you talk about the work that goes along with spell work, is making space. If you're trying to manifest money, are you applying for the job? Have you opened up sales in your entrepreneurial pursuits? Have you um, called the power company to see if you could save on your bill, or your phone company, because savings is about abundance as well. Or if it's love, what have you done? Are you on the websites? Are you putting yourself out there? Are you calling the person? So on and so forth. Or have you let go of the past? I see a lot of people being ready for that. They're like, oh, I'm ready for love. And oh, but they got their side person waiting in tow. And I'm like,
Mhm.
they're a placeholder. Like, they are literally occupying the space you're trying to fill.
That's exactly true. And it applies to anything. Anything we want to manifest in our lives, we have to make room for that to come in. For instance, if we want a job, and it's also about clarity too. If we want a job, do we really want a job? Do we really want to go out and work, or do we want income?
Right.
We have to be very specific. And if we want income, that can show up in a lot of different ways.
Hmm.
And now, especially, we're in a place where entrepreneurship is really the thing. And lots of people are making money from what they're able to do rather than who they know, or what, trading in their hours for a handful of dimes and going through the anxiety of going to an office job. So it's really about making that investment in yourself. So if
Absolutely.
you know that you just want income, look in all the ways you could make space for income in your life. If you know you want love, what do you want? What are you wanting to feel in regard to love? Are you looking for the love of a family? Are you
Mm.
looking for romantic love? Are you just wanting a booty call? What are you looking for? And make space for that. And like you point out, what's in the middle of that space? I've got one client now, bless her heart, that is wanting to burn a soulmate candle literally at the same time that she's burning candles to get an ex back.
Oh, and
And
those two things aren't jiving.
no, they're going to be incongruent energy because you're pulling someone else into the space you're making for that soulmate to step in. And so it really is about letting go, and it's about free falling for a little
Mm.
bit so that you can have space for what you want and what you need to come in. And one of the bravest things you can ever do, and one of the most terrifying things you can ever do, is to just open up your life and invite the universe to fix what's broken.
Mm.
And just say, you know what? I'm clearly not qualified to manage my life. So
I need an adult.
whatever you show me right now, I'm following.
Yep.
I'll do what you tell me. And when I mentioned my first husband leaving me, it was very abrupt, very sudden. And it was the direct result of a spell I had done just maybe 5 or 6 weeks earlier, where
Mm.
all I asked for was joy. I wanted to have joy in my life. And to my mind, I got the exact opposite, because very suddenly, very unexpectedly, my husband, who I'd been with at that time for 19 years,
Mm.
good number, was leaving. It wasn't negotiable. But the universe was saying, you cannot have full joy when you
Mm.
are with this person. So the universe had to forcefully make space for my joy that I had attempted to manifest.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, whew. I can again empathize with that. When I opened my store, I was like, man, you know, I want to work. I want to do these things, and I kept trying to work what I desired to do in other people's businesses, and they kept closing. Like, I'd get there and they'd be like, all right, we're done. We're hanging it up. And I'm like, I just got here. What is happening? Wasn't even getting fired. They just kept snatching the jobs away from me. And then I finally opened my business, and it was like, oh, that's what you meant, universe. Got it.
Yep.
It's a wild roller coaster. But the I mean, I can even feel my heart quickening, because I'll ask that question, kind of, what do I need to do? But only halfway mean it sometimes. So to have have the universe come in and parent you and take things away and bring other things, and the timing is never, it's uncomfortable because universal timing is so slow. I mean,
And the
it's
universe gets so excited when you do release and let the universe take over. So it just starts moving all these tiles around. All the chessboard pieces start flying all over the board, and you're like, "No, I didn't mean. No, don't do that. No, don't." And the universe is like, "What? Don't fight against me. I'm trying to do
right,
what you said."
right,
And it just, wow. But where you end up is phenomenal
every time,
every time.
every single time. There's not an instance where I surrendered and I actually regret it now.
Same.
So,
Yep.
but you
There's
want to talk about
times
a
that
clarifying crisis when the
there's
universe comes in.
there's times I surrendered and went, well, shit. But I always ended up in a better place.
Right, with better people, with better situations, with so much more expansion. And that's what we really need. I've said it before. You can talk about raising your vibration all you want, but if you are ungrounded with wise, if you're not expanded and stable, doesn't matter how high you raise your vibration, you're gonna fall.
And if you're around people who are lower vibration, you are ultimately going to fall. A lot of people like to elevate themselves by being the most enlightened person in the room or being
Mm.
the smartest person in the room. And like Eric says, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And the problem with that is, sure, it's easy then to be the guru. It's easy then to be the smartest person, the hippest person, the coolest person, but you will sacrifice. You will lose in the long run because you are surrounding yourself by people who are vibing lower than you are. And when you do that, it will pull you right down there with it. You've got to let go of the people who bring you down.
Absolutely. And we
And
only
that's
develop
it's
through challenge.
mercenary, but it's true.
We only develop through challenge and crisis. And so, to challenge yourself to move beyond what you're comfortable is the best way to match these moments of development. So, if you are uncomfortable in the stillness of the end of the year or the dark of the end of the year, or, being faced with certain inner reflections as you go inward in the ways that we've talked about, you're on the right track. That's not the wrong path. I've had that as a trend as well. People saying, I'm uncomfortable. I must be doing something wrong. And it's like, no, you're in the thick of it and you're on the right path. And it'll clear soon. I've gotten so many messages, oh, it's going to clear soon. It's going to clear soon, but you've just got a little further to go. And there seems to be a lot of unfinished business being taken care of along with all of this. And so just it's about sticking it out and what can you apply. We've talked about grounding and shielding. We've talked about um, cleansing your space, improving what you eat or changing it. I mean, there's so much that could be applied right now, and I think that people um, look at religion and medicine to say, okay, well, usually when one thing's not working, we try something else. And in spirituality, it is the repetition that grounds your process, and then you may add in, small new things, but there isn't this huge shift into something else that takes place. It's an additive process that you gain in true balanced spirituality. You're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Now, we do have an audience question. Yay! Um, it's either Tamara or Tamara, so please forgive the
It's Tamara
pronunciation.
Austin. Mm-hmm.
It's Tamara, and
Tamara.
she's saying, "I'm feeling stagnant. Is that a time to surrender?" What are your thoughts, Katrina?
I think if you're feeling stagnant, figure out what you're surrendering to.
Hmm.
Usually, the times that we're feeling like we need to surrender are when everything is in turmoil around us. So there's a lot of activity and action, and we don't know where the current is taking us or what to do. So there's a sense of urgency that comes right before surrender where you're truly identifying I don't know where this is going, so I don't know where to lead this, so I'm just going to let go. I think when we're stagnant, especially in winter, it's really, you can surrender, but you're not surrendering to an activity, you're surrendering to a stagnation. And
Mm.
you're saying, I'm in hibernation right now, it's winter time, I'm going to relax and see what comes up for me in March, and as the earth starts to warm up again, and then decide what's going on. That's my take on it.
For my neurodivergent brothers and sisters, stagnation can also be representative of a fear of moving forward and so doing nothing. Not to get into the space of activity in the way that we were saying isn't ideal for the wintertime, but there are some things that you can feel the precipice of change coming. And you know, if you take one step, everything else starts to move into motion. And so it's like I can see that over there, but if I don't move near it, then I still have some semblance of control. I'm controlling this by doing nothing. And so asking yourself, is there something that you're afraid to step into as well? Um, a shift that needs to take place, a natural shift that needs to take place that you're not surrendering to, and then go from there. But I don't think that there's just in the way that we're able to sort of view this from two different vantage points. I don't think that there is a general rule to stagnation, um, because it's a natural part of life as well. It can be a time to observe, like Katrina was saying. So
So I think it's really about evaluating where you are specifically yourself,
yeah.
and whether that is a time for action or a time for stillness. Sometimes stagnation is also a gift.
Hmm.
Sometimes stagnation is a time when you can rest and not have changes inflicted on you. Now, also, if you're feeling stagnant because you're feeling stuck in a rut, or you're feeling like things are bad and they're never going to change,
Mm.
that's when you want to start, instead of surrendering into your conditions that feel unacceptable to you, start talking to other people about what some alternatives might be that you're not seeing.
Right, stagnation versus rumination. I
Right. I like that.
I love that you said stagnation can be a gift as well, and something that stands out to me when it is a gift. There is the universe is still catching you in moments where we can recognize that stagnation would normally harm a process or harm something in your life, um, like in business you probably don't ever want stagnation. However, there can be these stagnant moments where you're getting just enough to sustain the business,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not the crashing waves of abundance that it normally is. And that's when at least I recognize stagnation being a gift in that moment. It's like, oh, maybe this is a period of rest. I've had weeks like that where it was just enough appointments to sustain the business. However, um, I got more rest than I normally would if it was a busier period. I don't know if you've had that experience.
I agree completely. And I'm actually having one of those now, where it's kind of like, it's holidays there. Our retail tends to go down at the holidays, and it'll pop up just in time for people to get Christmas gifts and things like that. But for the most part, over winter, our and in fact, any change of seasons, our business tends to stagnate. And I, Virgo, start to get that feeling of, ooh, is this going away? Ooh, are we in trouble? Oh, do I need to be concerned? And Eric, the Scorpio, is always the one that will say, hey, it's cycles. It's cycles. Just go with it. Enjoy this time, relax, kick back a little bit. And the store still supports itself. We aren't even in danger. It's just my stupid poverty mindset
Oh,
starts going into the idea of whoop whoop, red alert, we're not making enough money, woo woo woo, what are you going to do? And so I end up losing all of my relaxing time in the stagnant time, because I'm stressing out over it and trying to come up with new ideas, when I really could just coast and surrender to that stagnation and just be where I am, be engaged in that moment where you are.
chronic lessons.
Yep.
because I do it too sometimes, for sure. So hopefully, Tamara, we've answered your question. What we've had an opportunity to do tonight is highlight a lot of pretty awesome things. If you are overextending yourself during these holidays, if you can only take an hour, do it. If you can take 24, a couple days, you know, go for it, because it's going to pay off in the long run. You're going to need that rest period, as we've mentioned and shown through our own lives, for sure. There's always going to be somebody who needs something, but do you have the capacity to give it? And coming to the truth and realizations about that and what you're capable of is important. If you're having a clarifying crisis in your life, come to the realization of that clarity. That's what it's for. It's not punishment. It's to say, wait a minute, you might need to turn left instead of the ideal turning right that you were hoping for. And I say we keep rolling with this theme of uh, sales being less important than family. I mean, I'm loving it, and it sounds weird as a retail business owner to say, "Oh, I love this," but the stillness, there's still healing taking place. It just doesn't have to be stuff related, and I just think that's awesome. And we're coming to the closing of 2021, but you don't have to do anything. Keep your planning. Keep getting ready for spring, because that's the natural movement, unless your birthday is coming up and you want to do something new for that part of your new year. But we've had a lot of insights and examples come forward. If you guys are feeling any of this, let us know. Let us know in the comments what your experience have been. If you're watching this on the replay, um, let us know. We want to hear from you, our community. And any closing thoughts from you, Katrina?
I'm just excited to be here and to be going into a new year with you as my broadcast partner, which we didn't know exactly where that was going to land after we went through some of our own changes we had to surrender to.
Yeah.
And those changes happened for both of us during pretty strong times of upheaval in our lives. And so, not knowing where any of that rubble was going to land, I'm so glad to be here with you doing this broadcast. I love our studio audience, or not studio audience, our virtual audience. They're so interactive and wonderful. I really hope they can find us at our new time and our new hour. And I've got to apologize. That was all me, because the Mondays just weren't going to work in my schedule anymore. And Dahlia was so kind and adaptive to bringing it in on Thursday, which is a lot easier for me. Hopefully that'll end up being what sticks and everybody can find us. But please remember that if you're watching us on video, we still look at the comments. We'll still jump in with you. Say what you're thinking, say what you're feeling about what we're talking about, and the conversation continues into our comments every single week.
Well said. Absolutely couldn't agree more. This is how we build, guys. And what you're thinking is probably what somebody else is thinking as well. So we love the interaction, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Again, that's Thursdays now, 2 p.m. Pacific Standard, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And
Yeah.
until then, happy healing, guys, and we'll
Take
catch
care,
you next
everybody.
time. Bye.
Bye.